Hi, my name is Dan Oddie, Engineering and Technical Sales with Detroit Speed.
And I'm Mark McDonald, Fabricator here at Detroit Speed.
And today we're going to show you is the installation of our new 3rd Gen F-body products. And we're going to start with the subframe connectors and then move to the quadrillink installation. So as you can see, we have our 3rd Gen Camaro lifted up on jack stands. We've got the battery disconnected so there's no power. We've also removed all the interior, including the seats, the carpet and padding, as well as any other interior panels such as the headliner. Now at this point, now we're ready to start installation on the subframe connectors.
Alright, we're going to go ahead and start on the passenger side subframe connector install. First of all, we want to remove our factory seat belt retainer. So, get it out of the way. Okay, we're going to go ahead and lay out our cut marks for the connector where it comes to the floor. Alright, first we want to locate where our front seat mount bolts in. So you'll see from the edge of this to here, we're going to go 5 inches. Okay, in the rear, to locate the rear of our cut line, we're going to come off the edge of this rocker reinforcement. So come off of it 1 inch. Alright, once we have our front and our rear cut lines established, we're going to come off the edge of the rocker 1.5 inches. Yeah, there'll be 1.5 inches all the way down. So we'll lay out 1.5 inches here, in the middle, and at the end. And we'll just connect. That'll be our cut line.
So what you see here is before we can put the subframe connector in, this pinch weld is a little bit warped. So what Mark's going to do is go ahead and flatten this area and then grind it smooth so we have a good slot to put the subframe connector in. So as you can see, Mark's got the rocker panel nice and flat and he's ground away the areas to install the subframe connector. Also underneath the car, he's cleaned up the areas for the doubler plates for the front and rear torque boxes so that now we're ready to install the subframe connector. So Mark's down below, he's going to guide it up into the slot that he cut. So Mark did it. Might need to tap it in place so it's nice against the floor. You'll see that the back of the connector is right up against the rear seat riser here. Now that it's in place, we'll go down underneath the car so we can show you where the front and rear doubler plates go on the torque boxes. Now that Mark's got the subframe connector clamped to the rocker panel, he's going to go ahead and fit the front doubler plate to make sure everything fits nice.
Yeah, that's good. So we're going to have to modify the connector or move it over in so it's good and flush with the pinch weld on the rocker. So it's good.
Okay, now that Mark's got the front and rear doubler plate in place and everything fits nice, he's going to go ahead and start stitch welding the connector to the rocker panel. And how he's going to do that is he'll weld 1 inch, skip 2 inches, weld 1 inch, and keep going that way all the way to the front of the connector. That way the car stays nice and cool. Now that Mark's got the subframe connector welded in from underneath the car, we'll come inside the car. He'll tack weld it in a couple places so that the floor pan doesn't move. Then he'll stitch weld around it and then do a complete line of weld around the entire connector. As you can see, Mark's got the subframe connector fully welded on the inside of the vehicle. It's actually now is a good time to weld your DSC seatbelt anchor. So what you want to do, using the old one as reference, mark yourself a reference line. Take the right hand side anchor, line it right up on that center line. And the other way to tell you have the right one is that the tab is pointing towards the front of the vehicle. And Mark will go ahead and weld it in place. Now that Mark's got the subframe connector fully welded to the vehicle on the inside of the car, we're going to come back up underneath the car so it can tack weld the rear doubler and then finish weld it. Now that Mark's got the subframe connector welded in from the back to the front, the last step is to install the front doubler plate, which he'll tack weld in place and then finish weld by using the plug weld holes that are already drilled in the plate.
Alright, now that I have the front doubler welded in, we have our closeout piece. We'll put it up here, fit it, and you'll see it needs to be trimmed to fit. So there's a gap here. What we'll do is trim off, mark it and trim it, and weld it in.
Now that Mark's got that front closeout in place, he's going to just grind everything smooth for a nice, clean, consistent look. Now that Mark's got the passenger side subframe connector completely welded in, we're going to move over to the driver's side. So as you can see, Mark's taking the original seatbelt anchor out so he can lay out the measurements to slot the floor at the rocker panel. Okay, with the original seatbelt anchor out of the way, Mark's going to lay out the floor pan where he needs to cut it. So basically, from the back rocker panel doubler, he's going to measure 1 inch forward and make a mark. Then from there, he'll measure 44 3/8 of an inch forward to get his front cut line. Once that's scribed, he'll come off the pinch weld of the rocker panel 1.5 inches to get the width of the cut, just like on the passenger side. Now that Mark's got these scribed lines all laid out on the floor pan, he can go ahead and take a cutoff wheel and cut through the lines to make room for the subframe connector. Now that Mark's got the floor pan all cut out for the subframe connector, same as the passenger side, he'll go in and kind of flatten out this pinch weld, make it nice and smooth, and then clear off the areas where he's going to put the front and the rear double plates. Now that Mark's got the pinch flange all smoothed out, and he's got the area of the floor pan all prepped for the subframe connector, we'll go ahead and install it from underneath the car, starting with the back. Go ahead, Mark, get this. Slide in just like the passenger side. Then Mark will hammer it into place. And once that's done, we'll get everything clamped in place so we can get it tack welded. So before we clamp the subframe connector to the vehicle, we want to make sure it's back far enough. And to do that, we can take our inside front doubler plate, put it in position where it'll be welded in later, and just by that fitment there, we can see that we do have to slide the subframe connector back just a little bit. You may need to trim the back of the driver's side connector around that doubler plate so you can get the connector back far enough. Now that Mark's got the subframe connector clamped to the vehicle, he's going to go ahead and start from the front to the back and tack weld it in place. Now that Mark's got the subframe connector stitch welded from underneath the car, he'll come back inside and tack weld it in place from the back coming up forward. Now that Mark's got the inside of the connector tack welded in place, he'll start from the front and move his way backwards, doing a complete full weld. Now that Mark's got the subframe connector welded on the inside of the vehicle, he'll go ahead and line up the front inner doubler plate. Now what you may need to do is trim the outside of that doubler plate to sit flush against the outside toe pan of the car and line the connector up with the doubler plate. So he's got it tack welded in place. He left about an 1/8 inch gap between the doubler plate and the front of the connector. And now, as you can see, with the plug weld holes already pre-drilled in the doubler plate, he's welding it to the floor pan. Just like in the passenger side, we'll now weld the seatbelt anchor in on the driver's side connector. Same process as the other side. Line it up with the original seatbelt anchor and position this one in place with the tab pointing forward. As you can see, Mark is plug welding it to the rocker panel and the subframe connector on the driver's side. Okay, now that Mark's got the front inside doubler and the seatbelt anchor fully welded on the inside of the vehicle, we'll come back underneath and put the rear doubler plate in place. The Mark will hold it in place, make sure it sits flat to the floor pan and against the subframe connector, and then tack it in place. Again, on this doubler plate, the plug weld holes are pre-drilled, so he'll plug weld those and then finish weld around the entire doubler plate. Now that Mark's got the rear doubler plate finish welded, we'll move on to the front doubler plate. As you can see, he's got it in place. He's going to plug weld in the holes that are pre-drilled and then finish weld around the perimeter of the plate. With the Detroit Speed Subframe Connectors fully welded in, we'll add a ton of strength and rigidity to your chassis, which will help you improve in performance and handling. Now, one of the other added features of the DSC Subframe Connector Kit is our seatbelt anchor. Not only do we have provisions for your factory seatbelt mount, but also have a threaded insert on the side if you want to run a 5-point harness. Thanks for watching our Detroit Speed Subframe Connector installation video. If you have any questions, call us at 704-662-3272 or visit us on the website www.detroitspeed.com.